What trickery is this? Mal'Ganis! I don't know how you survived, but
Calm yourself, Prince Arthas. I am Tichondrius. Like Mal'Ganis, I am a Dreadlord. But I am not your enemy. In truth, I've come to congratulate you.
Congratulate me?
By killing your own father and delivering this land to the Scourge, you have passed your first test. The Lich King is pleased with your enthusiasm.
Yes. I've damned everyone and everything I've ever loved in his name. And I still feel no remorse, no shame, no pity.
The rune blade that you carry was forged by the Lich King and empowered to steal souls. Yours was the first one it claimed.
Then I'll make do without one. What is the Lich King's will?
The cult of the damned must be rallied once again. Many of the acolytes have been in hiding amongst the populace. Once you've rallied them, I will give you further instructions.
No one orders me around. Ah, at last. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers.
Greetings, great lord. Our master, Kel'Thuzad, told us that you would come.
Kel'Thuzad? How could he have known it?
Be wary. If the townsfolk see your undead minions, they'll call the local guards to stop you.
The damned stand
undead
ready.
have returned.
Ah, at last. Finally.
Prince Arthas, arm yourselves!
Ah, at last.
The undead!
Faithless
Sound the alarm!
I'll make sure you suffer. This is more like it. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Ah, at last. This is more like it. Finally.
Seek out the local graveyards. Those buried there will serve you well.
Ah, at last. Finally. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Speak, fool. Finally. Ah, at last. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers.
The dead have risen again. God!
This is more like it.
I live
at
only
last.
to serve, great lord.
Finally. This is more like it. Finally. Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers.
I bow to your will.
This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. Finally.
How could you murder your own father?
At last. Tread lightly. Now, Frostmourne. What is it now?
I'll make sure you suffer.
Finally. Tread lightly. Ah, at last. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers.
Only to serve.
Ah, at last. For the Lich King. This is more like it. Ah, at last. Finally. Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Ah, at last. This is more like it. Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers.
My life for Ner'zhul.
Sound the alarm!
Faithless coward.
Ah, at last.
Mercy, my
Your
lord!
pain shall be legendary.
This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers.
You bastard. Speak, fool.
Ah, at last. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers. Tread lightly. Finally. This is more like it. Ah, at last. Finally.
Help! The undead have returned. The dead have risen
Frostmourne
again.
hungers.
Guards!
This is more like it. Ah, at last.
My life for Ner'zhul.
This is more like it.
Mercy, my lord!
Faithless coward.
Ah, at
Mercy, my
last.
lord!
This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers. Ah, at last. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. Frostmourne hungers.
I bow to your will.
Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers.
I'm in luck. These graves were dug recently. Arise in the name of the Lich King.
Speak, fool. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers. Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers. Finally.
Say your prayers.
Ah, at last.
Bandits, run!
Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Finally. Frostmourne hungers.
The damned stand
Finally.
ready.
This is more like it. Ah, at last. This is more like it. What is it now? Finally. This is more like it. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Finally.
Frostmourne hungers. At last. This is more like
stand
it.
ready.
At last. Finally. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it. At last. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it.
The damned
Frostmourne
stand ready.
hungers. Finally. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. At last.
My life for Nezul.
Finally.
Speak, fool.
This is more like it. At last. Frostmourne hungers.
The damned stand ready.
At last. This is more
Help,
like
the
it.
undead have returned.
For the
Help,
Lich
the
King.
undead have returned.
You've betrayed us all.
Finally. At last. This is more like it. At last. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Finally. Frostmourne hungers.
Mercy.
My
Lord.
life for Nezul.
At last. Finally.
You should burn in hell.
Tread lightly. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. Finally.
I'll make sure you suffer.
This is more like it. At last. This is more like it. Finally. At last. Frostmourne hungers. At last. This is more like it. What is it now?
Speak, fool.
Finally. This is more like it. Finally. At last. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Finally. Frostmourne hungers.
The dead have
Our
risen
forces
again.
are under attack.
Guards!
Faithless coward.
This is more like it.
Help! The undead have
Frostmourne
returned.
hungers. At last. Frostmourne
The dead have
hungers.
risen again. Guards!
At last.
Help! The undead have returned.
Finally.
The damned stand ready.
Frostborn hungers.
Finally.
Frostborn hungers. This is more like it.
The damned stand
Finally.
ready.
Ah, at last.
Kill them all!
Ah, at last. Frostborn
The damned
hungers.
stand ready.
This is more like it. Frostborn hungers.
The undead!
Ah,
Sound
at
the
last.
alarm!
The
Frostborn
damned
Dead
stand
had
hungers.
risen again!
This is more
Guards!
like it. Frostborn hungers.
Finally.
This is more like it.
Well done, Death Knight. The cult is nearly assembled.
Lordaeron lies in ashes. What good are these cultists to us now?
They will aid you in your next undertaking.
And what's that?
You will go to Underhall and recover the remains of the Acolyte's former master, the necromancer, Kel'Thuzad.